The basement smelled like cigarettes and desperation. I stood against the concrete wall, my wrists bound with zip ties that cut into my skin, while my father paced in front of me. His hands shook, from withdrawal or fear, I couldn't tell anymore. Probably both. "It's just temporary, Sophia," he said for the third time in 10 minutes. His voice cracked on my name. "Just until I get back on my feet. They'll treat you well." Viktor promised. Viktor Kozlov is a human trafficker. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You're selling me to a human trafficker." "I'm not selling you." But he wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's a contract. You work for him for 2 years and my debt is cleared. That's all. Just 2 years. 2 years in one of Viktor's brothels. 2 years of hell that would destroy whatever was left of me." I'd heard the stories. Every girl in South Boston knew about Viktor's operations. The drugs, the violence, the way girls went in and never came out the same. If they came out at all. "Dad." I tried to keep my voice calm, rational. The same tone I'd used when talking him down from ledges before. "This isn't you. You're not this person. We can figure something else out. There is nothing else." He spun toward me, his face twisted with anguish and rage. "I owe them $200,000, Sophia. $200,000. You think I have that kind of money? You think anyone's going to loan that to a degenerate gambler who's already burned every bridge in this city?" I'd known about the gambling. Had watched him spiral for 2 years after Mom died, throwing away her life insurance money at underground poker games and betting on sports he didn't understand. But I hadn't known how bad it had gotten. Hadn't known he'd borrowed from the kind of men who didn't accept late payments. The door at the top of the stairs opened. Heavy footsteps descended, and I counted 5 separate treads. My stomach clenched. Viktor Kozlov appeared first, his bulk filling the narrow stairway. He was shorter than I'd expected, maybe 5'8", but wide, with the thick neck and scarred knuckles of someone who'd done his own dirty work for years. 2 men flanked him, both younger, both watching me with the flat assessment of livestock appraisers. "Michael." Viktor's accent was thick, Eastern European. "Russian, maybe Ukrainian. Good to see you ready to honor your commitment." My father's face had gone pale. "The money? You brought the money." "Of course." Viktor gestured to one of his men, who produced a black duffel bag. 200,000 as agreed. "And your daughter comes with me tonight." "Tonight?" My father's voice pitched higher. I thought I'd have time to." "Time to what?" "Change your mind." Viktor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No, Michael. We do this now. Clean break. Better for everyone." I watched my father stare at the duffel bag. Watched him calculate, his addiction doing the math. $200,000. Enough to clear his debt. Maybe enough left over for a few good hands, a chance to win big, to fix everything. The delusion was so clear on his face, I wanted to scream. "She's 24, my father said, like he was listing specifications on a car. "Healthy. Smart, she's got a college degree. Psychology. Never been arrested, no drugs, no. I can see what she is." Viktor moved closer to me, and I pressed harder against the wall. His eyes traveled over me slowly, cataloging. "Pretty enough. Good bones. A little thin, but we can fix that." He reached out to grab my chin, and I jerked my head away. His hand caught my jaw in a grip like iron, forcing my face toward him. "She's got spirit." "That's good. Men pay more for spirit." He released me and turned to my father. "She'll do. The money's yours." This was it. The moment my father would either find his spine or condemn me to hell. He reached for the duffel bag. The door at the top of the stairs exploded inward. Everything happened in the space between heartbeats. Viktor's men reached for weapons, but they were too slow. 3 men in dark suits poured down the stairs with the fluid precision of people who'd done this 1,000 times. The first one, tall, broad-shouldered, moving like violence given human form, had a gun pressed to Viktor's temple before the Russian could even turn around. "Don't." The single word carried absolute authority. American accent, educated, but with something harder underneath. "Tell your men to put their weapons on the ground." Slowly. Viktor's face had gone purple with rage, but he wasn't stupid. "Do it," he growled. 2 guns clattered to the concrete floor. The man holding Viktor stepped back slightly, keeping his weapon trained, but creating space. That's when I finally got a good look at him. He was maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble. All sharp angles and controlled power. Italian features, olive skin, a thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my father's debt, tailored perfectly to shoulders that suggested he didn't need the gun to be dangerous. His eyes, dark brown, almost black, swept the room, cataloging everything in an instant. They lingered on me for maybe 2 seconds, taking in the zip ties, my defensive posture, the fear I couldn't quite hide. Something shifted in his expression. Something cold and lethal. "Matteo Salvatore," Viktor said, recognition and fear warring in his voice. "This isn't your business. You're in my city, Viktor. That makes it my business." Matteo's voice stayed level, conversational, but there was steel underneath. "Especially when you're trafficking women in my territory. I have an agreement. You have nothing." Matteo cut him off. "You're going to take your men and leave Boston tonight. If I see you in this city again, I'll kill you myself." "Understood." Viktor's jaw worked. "The money. Consider it the cost of breathing." Matteo gestured with his gun toward the stairs. "Go. Now." For a moment, I thought Viktor might argue. Might push back against this stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere and dismantled his deal in 30 seconds. But something in Matteo's eyes, some promise of violence that went beyond words, made him reconsider. "This isn't over," Viktor said, but he was already backing toward the stairs. "Yes," Matteo said quietly. "It is." Viktor and his men disappeared up the stairs. I heard the front door slam, then silence except for my father's ragged breathing. Matteo turned to him. "Michael Russo, you attempted to sell your daughter to cover your gambling debts. It wasn't a question." My father nodded mutely. "How much do you owe?" 200,000. But Viktor was going to. I don't care what Viktor was going to do. Matteo pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "I'm clearing your debt. All of it. Consider it paid in full." My father's eyes went wide. "You what? Why would you?" "Because I won't have trafficking in my city. Because your daughter doesn't deserve to pay for your mistakes." Matteo's voice hardened. "And because if I ever hear you've gambled another dollar, if you've gone near a card game or a bookie or even a lottery ticket, I will make you regret being born. Do we understand each other?" My father nodded frantically. "Good. Get out of my sight." My father hesitated, looking at me. For a second, I thought I saw regret in his eyes. Shame. Maybe even love. But then he grabbed the duffel bag Viktor had left and ran up the stairs like the basement was on fire. The door slammed. My father was gone. I was alone in a basement with 3 strange men and the man who'd just paid $200,000 for me. The panic I'd been suppressing slammed into me all at once. My vision tunneled. My breath came in short gasps. The zip ties cut deeper into my wrists as I struggled instinctively against them. "Easy." Matteo holstered his gun and moved toward me slowly, hands visible. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Matteo Salvatore. I'm going to cut those zip ties, and then we're going to talk. Is that acceptable?" Was it acceptable? Did I have a choice? I nodded because what else could I do? He pulled a knife from his jacket, sleek, expensive looking, and stepped into my space. He smelled like cedar and bergamot, expensive cologne that probably cost more than my rent. Up close, I could see the scar through his eyebrow was old, silvered with time. Could see the precise way he moved, economy of motion that suggested either military training or years of violence. The zip ties fell away. Blood rushed back into my hands, painful and tingling. "Thank you," I whispered, rubbing my wrists. "Don't thank me yet." He stepped back, giving me space. "We need to discuss terms." My stomach dropped. "Terms? I just paid your father's debt. That creates an obligation." He said it matter-of-factly, no threat in his voice, just stating reality. "You have 2 choices. Walk out of here and pretend this never happened, though I can't guarantee Viktor won't come looking for you. Or you come with me, work off the debt, and I keep you safe." "Work off the debt how?" My voice shook despite my best efforts. "Not what you're thinking." Something like distaste crossed his face. "I'm not Viktor. I don't traffic women, I don't run brothels, and I don't force anyone into my bed. What I need is someone smart, educated, and capable of discretion. Your father said you have a psychology degree." "Yes. Boston University. I graduated 2 years ago." "Currently employed?" "I work at a nonprofit. Counseling services for at-risk youth." I wrapped my arms around myself. "It doesn't pay much. It wouldn't need to if you worked for me." He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "I need someone who can read people. Assess threats, identify lies, understand motivations. My business requires those skills. Your business being organized crime." My business being various enterprises, some legal, some less so. He didn't pretend otherwise. I won't lie to you, Sophia. I operate outside the law. But I have rules. No drugs, no trafficking, no hurting civilians. I'm not a good man, but I'm not Viktor either. I should have been terrified. Should have been calculating escape routes and planning how to get to the police. But something about his directness, his refusal to sugarcoat reality, made me listen. How long? I asked. 2 years. Same time frame Viktor would have demanded, but you'll actually be safe. You'll live in my home, work as my analyst, and at the end of 2 years, your father's debt is cleared and you walk away free. And if I say no, then you walk out of here right now, and I'll still protect you from Viktor for the next month. After that, you're on your own. He crossed his arms. But I'm not going to lie to you. Viktor doesn't forget. He lost $200,000 tonight, and the merchandise he was promised. He'll want compensation. Merchandise. The word made me feel sick. I looked around the basement, at the concrete walls that had almost been my prison, at the place where my father had been willing to sell me. Thought about my tiny apartment in Dorchester, my job that barely covered rent, the student loans I was drowning under. Thought about Viktor Kozlov's flat eyes and the fate I'd narrowly escaped. What's the catch? I asked. The catch? Nobody offers something for nothing. You paid $200,000 for me. I paid $200,000 to clear a debt. You're not property, Sophia. You're a person with skills I need. He held my gaze steadily. The catch is that my world is dangerous. Working for me means seeing things you can't unsee, knowing things that could get you killed if you talk. It means living in a gilded cage for 2 years. Comfortable, safe, but still a cage. And at the end of 2 years, you walk away with $100,000 cash, a clean record, and my protection for life if you ever need it. He pulled out a card from his wallet, cream cardstock with embossed lettering. A phone number, nothing else. Think about it. You have 24 hours to decide. He turned toward the stairs, his men falling into formation behind him. Wait, I called out. He paused, looking back. If I say yes, do I get to call my own shots? Make my own decisions. Within reason. You're not a prisoner, Sophia. You're an employee. A highly compensated, heavily protected employee, but still an employee. His expression softened slightly. I'm not your father. I won't control you or break you down. I need you functional and sharp, not traumatized and compliant. It was the word functional that decided me. Not rescued, not saved, not protected. Functional. Like I was a person with agency, not a victim to be pitted. I don't need 24 hours, I said. I'll do it. He studied me for a long moment. You're certain? No. But I'm practical. I managed something close to a smile. And apparently unemployed as of today, since I'm not going back to my apartment if Viktor knows where I live. Smart. He descended 1 step, extending his hand. Then we have a deal. 2 years starting tonight. I crossed the basement and shook his hand. His grip was warm and firm, calloused in a way that suggested he did more than just give orders. 1 rule, he said, not releasing my hand yet. Complete honesty always. I can work with fear, uncertainty, even anger. But I can't work with lies. If you lie to me once, the deal's off. Understood? Understood. I met his eyes. And the same goes for you. If you lie to me, I'm gone. That earned me a small smile, the first real one I'd seen from him. Fair enough. Come on. Let's get you out of this basement. Matteo's house wasn't what I expected. I'd been picturing something ostentatious, marble columns, gold fixtures, the kind of nouveau riche display that screamed Mafia money. Instead, it was a restored brownstone in Beacon Hill, all understated elegance and old money taste. Dark wood floors, original crown molding, furniture that was clearly expensive but not flashy. Guest room is on the 2nd floor, he said, leading me up a curved staircase. You'll have your own bathroom, office space, and privacy. I'm on the 3rd floor. Alessandro, he gestured to the older man who'd been one of his backup in the basement, lives in the carriage house out back. He'll be your primary security detail. Alessandro nodded at me. Up close, he looked like he'd been carved from granite, all hard angles and watchful eyes. Miss Russo. Just Sophia, I said automatically. Sophia. He inclined his head slightly. I'll be outside your door tonight. Tomorrow, we'll discuss security protocols. Security protocols. Because this was my life now. The guest room was bigger than my entire apartment had been. King bed with a cream duvet, windows overlooking a private garden, an adjoining bathroom with a clawfoot tub. A desk sat in the corner, already equipped with a laptop and monitors. Your work setup, Matteo explained. Encrypted systems, secure access to my files. Alessandro will train you on the technology tomorrow. For tonight, just rest. He moved to the door, then paused. There are clothes in the closet. I had someone get basics in your size, but we'll arrange proper shopping later. How did you know my size? The question came out before I could stop it. I didn't. I guessed. He turned back, something almost amused in his expression. I'm good at reading people. Occupational necessity. Right. Reading people. About that. I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. When you say you need an analyst, what exactly does that mean? What will I actually be doing? Sitting in on meetings. Reading body language, micro-expressions, tells. Telling me who's lying, who's scared, who's planning something. He leaned against the doorframe. I have people who handle the business operations, but I need someone who can see what's underneath. Someone trained to understand human behavior. Like a psychological profiler. Exactly like that. He crossed his arms. You'll also review contracts, assess new partnerships, occasionally sit in on negotiations. I need to know who I can trust and who's going to stab me in the back. And in return, I get room and board, protection, and $100,000 at the end of 2 years. Plus whatever salary we agree on. You're still working. You should still get paid. I hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected any of this. The respect, the space, the acknowledgement that I was more than just an asset he'd acquired. Thank you. Don't thank me. His expression went distant. I'm not doing this out of kindness, Sophia. I'm doing it because I need your skills and you need protection. That's all this is. A business arrangement. But something in his voice suggested it wasn't quite that simple. Something in the way he'd looked at me in that basement, bound and terrified, had triggered a response that went beyond business calculation. Why did you come? I asked. To the basement, I mean. How did you even know Viktor was there? I have people who monitor this kind of activity. When Viktor crossed into my territory with trafficking plans, I got a call. He pushed off from the doorframe. Trafficking is a hard line for me. I don't tolerate it. Period. Because of your mother. The words were out before I could stop them. I'd been reading his body language without meaning to, the way his jaw had tightened when Viktor talked about merchandise, the particular fury that had flashed across his face when he'd seen me bound, the kind of rage that came from personal history. He went very still. What makes you say that? The way you reacted, the specific nature of your anger. It wasn't just about business or territory. It was personal. I wrapped my arms around myself. Someone you loved was hurt this way, and you either couldn't save them or you were too late. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then, my mother was trafficked from Naples when she was 17. Promised work as a seamstress, ended up in a brothel in Providence. My father, my biological father, was the man who trafficked her. My chest tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. But his voice had gone flat, emotionless. She got out eventually. Met a good man who adopted me and gave me his name. But she never forgot what it felt like to be property. To have no choice, no voice, no agency. Is she still alive? No. She died when I was 16. He met my eyes. But she taught me that power without purpose is worthless. That if I was going to live in this world, operate in the darkness, I had to have lines I wouldn't cross. Trafficking women is mine. I nodded slowly, understanding clicking into place. That's why you paid so much. Not just for my skills. Because you couldn't save her, but you could save me. Maybe. He straightened. Or maybe I just need a good analyst. Get some rest, Sophia. Tomorrow we start work. He left, closing the door softly behind him. I heard Alessandro take up position in the hallway, the subtle creak of floorboards as he settled in. I was alone in a strange house, employed by a crime boss, having narrowly escaped human trafficking by trading one form of bondage for another. But as I lay back on the bed's soft, expensive safe, I realized I didn't feel trapped. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, not since before my mother died and my father started his spiral. I felt like I might actually have a future worth living. The first week was orientation. Alessandro trained me on security protocols, panic words, escape routes, what to do if we were ambushed. He was thorough and patient, treating me like a professional rather than a victim. You carry this at all times. He handed me a small device that looked like a key fob. Press the center button, and Matteo and I both get an immediate alert with your location. Press it twice, and we come armed and fast. What if I press it by accident? Then we come armed and fast, and you apologize for the false alarm. His expression didn't change. Better 100 false alarms than one real emergency where you hesitated. I practiced with the encrypted systems, learning how to access Matteo's files without leaving digital footprints. The amount of information was staggering: financial records, surveillance reports, profiles on everyone from city officials to rival organizations. Matteo Salvatore ran an empire, and he ran it with meticulous attention to detail. He owned restaurants, construction companies, real estate throughout New England. Some of it was legitimate business. Some of it was money laundering. All of it was profitable. Your job isn't to judge, Matteo told me during my third afternoon, when he found me staring at a particularly questionable construction contract. Your job is to tell me who I can trust. And how do I do that? You watch. You listen. You notice what everyone else misses. He pulled up a video on one of my monitors, security footage from what looked like a restaurant meeting. Tell me what you see. I watched two men having dinner, their conversation too low for the camera to catch. One was older, well-dressed, gesturing expansively. The other was younger, quieter, barely touching his food. The older man is performing, I said after a minute. He's working hard to appear confident and in control. Too hard. See how his gestures are just slightly exaggerated? How he keeps adjusting his watch. He's nervous but trying to hide it. And the younger man? He's scared. Not just nervous, actually frightened. His shoulders are hunched defensively. He's not making eye contact, and he's positioned himself with his back to the wall. He's expecting trouble. Good. Matteo leaned over my shoulder, pointing at the screen. Now watch what happens at the 16-minute mark. I watched. The older man said something that made the younger one flinch. Then the younger man's entire body language changed. Shoulders back, eye contact direct, hands flat on the table. He's made a decision, I said slowly. Whatever the older man just said, it pushed him past some internal limit. He's done being afraid. Exactly. Matteo straightened. 3 days after this meeting, the younger man testified against the older one. Federal racketeering charges. The older man is now serving 20 years. You knew he was going to flip. I suspected, but I needed confirmation before I acted. He closed the video. That's what you'll do for me. Give me confirmation before I make decisions that could get people killed. The weight of that settled on my shoulders. This wasn't just academic analysis. This was real, with real consequences. People's lives, including my own, would depend on my ability to read situations correctly. What if I'm wrong? I asked. Then we talk about why you were wrong and how to be more accurate next time. He met my eyes. I'm not expecting perfection, Sophia. I'm expecting honesty and effort. That became our routine. Mornings, I'd review files and surveillance. Afternoons, Matteo would test me with videos and photos, teaching me the specific tells he'd learned to recognize. Evenings, we'd have dinner together, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with Alessandro, and discuss the day's work. He was a good teacher. Patient when I struggled, encouraging when I succeeded, honest about the stakes. He never sugarcoated the reality of what he did, never pretended his business was anything other than what it was. And I found myself starting to trust him. It was dangerous. Stupid, even. He was a criminal, a man who operated outside the law and made his money through intimidation and violence. But he was also honest with me in a way my father never had been. He told me the truth, even when the truth was ugly. Why do you do this? I asked him one night over dinner. We were eating in the kitchen, his choice, more casual than the formal dining room. You're smart enough to make money legitimately. Why organized crime? He considered the question while cutting his steak with precise movements. Because legitimate business has rules that favor people who already have power. And because someone's going to run these operations. I'd rather it be someone with ethics than someone like Viktor. Ethics. I couldn't help the skepticism in my voice. Relative ethics. He smiled slightly. I don't pretend I'm a good man, Sophia. But I don't hurt civilians, I don't exploit the vulnerable, and I keep my word. That's more than most people in my position can say. And that's enough for you? It has to be. He set down his fork. I was born into this world. My adoptive father ran the Salvatore family before me. I inherited his territory, his responsibilities, his enemies. Walking away would have created a power vacuum that someone worse would have filled. So you're a crime boss out of responsibility. Something like that. He refilled both our wine glasses, a Barolo from his family's vineyard. Though I won't pretend I don't enjoy parts of it. The strategy, the chess game of it all. Building something that lasts. I took a sip of wine, considering. Do you ever want out? Sometimes. Late at night, when I'm dealing with the reality of what I do. His expression went distant. But then I think about what would happen to the people who depend on me. The legitimate businesses that employ hundreds of families. The protection I provide for people who have nowhere else to turn. Walking away would mean abandoning all of that. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself. Maybe I am. He looked at me then, really looked at me. What about you? Do you ever want out of our arrangement? Every day, I admitted. And then I remember the alternative was Viktor's brothel, and I decide I can handle 2 years of this. Just 2 years. That was the deal. Yes. Something shifted in his expression. But deals can be renegotiated if both parties agree. My pulse kicked up. Are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. Yet. He stood collecting plates. I'm just noting that 2 years is an artificial deadline. If you wanted to stay longer, if the work suited you, we could discuss terms. Why would I want to stay? Because you're good at this. Because the work matters. Because, he paused, his hands full of dishes, his dark eyes holding mine. Because maybe you're tired of being someone who just survives. Maybe you want to be someone who actually builds something. He left me sitting at the table, his words echoing in my head. 2 months in, Matteo brought me to my first real meeting. Remember, he said in the car on the way there, Alessandro driving while we sat in back. You're my analyst. You don't speak unless spoken to, you don't react visibly to anything you hear, and you take notes on everything. After the meeting, you'll brief me privately on your observations. Who am I meeting? Antonio Russo. No relation, despite the shared name. His expression was unreadable. He runs the North End territory and wants to propose a partnership. Shipping routes, profit sharing, the usual. And you don't trust him. I don't trust anyone. That's why you're here. The meeting was in a restaurant Matteo owned, upscale Italian, closed for the evening for a private event. Antonio Russo was already there when we arrived, flanked by 2 men who were probably his version of Alessandro. He was older than Matteo, maybe late 50s, with gray threading through dark hair slicked back from a face that had clearly seen its share of violence. He stood when we entered, his smile broad but not reaching his eyes. Matteo, good to see you. His accent was local, North End through and through. Then his gaze slid to me, assessing. And who's this lovely creature? My analyst. Matteo's hand settled on my lower back, a gesture that looked possessive but felt protective. Sophia Russo. She sits in on all my business meetings. Russo. Antonio's eyebrows rose. Any relation to Michael Russo? My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. My father. I don't work with him. Shame about his gambling problem. Antonio gestured to the table. Shall we? We sat. I pulled out my tablet, opening a note-taking app while Alessandro took up position by the door. Matteo sat directly across from Antonio, relaxed but alert. You wanted to discuss shipping routes, Matteo said, getting straight to business. I did. Antonio leaned back in his chair, his body language open and confident. I've got connections at the Port of Boston. Can get containers through with minimal inspection, if you know what I mean. You've got distribution networks inland. Seems like a natural partnership. What kind of containers are we discussing? Whatever you need. Weapons, luxury goods, cash. I'm flexible. And what do you want in return? 40% of profits from anything that moves through my port. Antonio smiled. Fair compensation for the risk. 40% is robbery. Matteo's voice stayed level. 20% is fair compensation. 30, and I throw in access to my customs officials. They continued negotiating while I watched Antonio carefully. His body language remained consistent, open, confident, relaxed. But his eyes kept flicking to me, assessing, calculating, trying to figure out why I was there and what I was observing. Around the 15-minute mark, Matteo mentioned specific timing for the first shipment. Antonio's left hand, which had been resting casually on the table, suddenly clenched into a fist. Just for a second. Then it relaxed again. I made a note. Stress response to specific timing. Investigate why. The meeting lasted another 30 minutes. They agreed on terms, 30%, access to customs officials, first shipment in 6 weeks. They shook hands, Antonio left with his men, and Matteo turned to me. Office. Now. Back at the brownstone, in the third-floor office that served as Matteo's command center, I pulled up my notes while he poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "Tell me what you saw," he said, handing me a glass. He was nervous about the 6-week timeline. When you mentioned it, his left hand clenched. Involuntary stress response. I pulled up the specific timestamp on the security footage Alessandro had already uploaded. "See? Right there." Matteo watched the video, then watched it again. "Good catch. What else?" He doesn't like that I'm a woman in a professional role. You could see it in the way he looked at me, dismissive at first, then calculating when he realized I actually served a function. He's old school. Probably uncomfortable with women having power. Noted. Continue. His men were on high alert the entire time. Not just normal security watchfulness, actual tension. See how the one on the left kept his hand near his waistband? He was ready to draw a weapon. That suggests either he doesn't trust you, or he knows something we don't about tonight being potentially dangerous. Or both. Matteo took a sip of whiskey. "Anything else?" When you mentioned profit percentages, he agreed to 32 easily. He was prepared to settle at that number, which means either 30% is actually what he wanted all along, or he's planning something that makes the percentage irrelevant. Matteo's expression had gone dark. Because if the shipment never arrives or gets confiscated, profit sharing doesn't matter. "You think he's setting you up?" "I think the 6-week timeline triggered a stress response for a reason." He pulled out his phone. "Alessandro, I need background on Antonio Russo. Everything. Financial records, recent meetings, any unusual activity. Dig deep." He hung up and looked at me. "Good work. That stress tell might have just saved us from walking into a trap. What happens now?" "Now we investigate. And if Antonio is planning to betray me, we deal with it before the shipment ever happens." He finished his whiskey. "This is the reality of my world, Sophia. Everyone's an enemy until proven otherwise." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." He moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. "But the alternative is ending up dead in a ditch because I trusted the wrong person." I joined him at the window, our reflections ghostly in the glass. "Do you trust anyone?" "Alessandro. A handful of others." He glanced at me sideways. "And increasingly you." "Why?" "Because you tell me the truth. Even when the truth is uncomfortable." He turned to face me fully. "You could have told me the meeting went fine, that Antonio seemed legitimate. Would have been easier. But you reported what you actually saw, not what you thought I wanted to hear. That was the deal. Complete honesty. Most people forget that deal when it becomes inconvenient." His hand came up, almost touching my face but not quite. "You haven't." The air between us felt suddenly charged. We were standing too close, the office too quiet, the moment too intimate. I should have stepped back. Should have maintained professional distance. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was. "Sophia." His voice had dropped lower, rougher. "I need to be clear about something." "What?" "This arrangement, our deal, it doesn't include this." He gestured between us. "Doesn't include me touching you or expecting anything physical. That's not part of our agreement." "I know, but I'm finding it increasingly difficult to remember that." His hand finally made contact, fingers ghosting along my jaw. "You're smart and brave and you see things no one else sees. And I'm not good at denying myself things I want." My heart hammered against my ribs. What if I want it too? Then we'd be crossing a line that can't be uncrossed. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "I'm your employer. You're working off a debt. The power dynamic is all wrong. What if I don't care about the power dynamic?" "You should care." But he was leaning closer anyway, his breath warm against my face. "Because I'm not a good man, Sophia. I do terrible things. And once you cross this line with me, you can't pretend you're separate from those things anymore." Maybe I don't want to pretend. I reached up, my fingers curling into his shirt. Maybe I'm tired of pretending everything is simple and clean when it's not. He kissed me then, soft at first, questioning, giving me every opportunity to pull back. When I kissed him back instead, he made a sound low in his throat and deepened the kiss. His hands came up to frame my face, his touch gentle despite the intensity of the moment. It felt nothing like I'd expected. Not demanding or possessive or taking. It felt like a question, like an offer, like something precious being handled with care. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Matteo rested his forehead against mine. "This is a mistake," he murmured. "Probably. We should maintain professional boundaries." "We probably should. I'm going to kiss you again anyway." "Good." This time the kiss was deeper, hungrier, hands tangling in hair and gripping fabric. He backed me against the window, his body warm and solid against mine, and I let myself get lost in the sensation of being wanted without being owned. Alessandro's voice crackled through the intercom. "Boss, we've got a problem." Matteo pulled back with a curse. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires your immediate attention. Downstairs." Now. We straightened our clothes and headed downstairs, the moment broken but not forgotten. Alessandro waited in the foyer, his expression grim. "Antonio Russo just contacted 3 of your warehouse managers. Offered them each $50,000 to look the other way during the shipment." Matteo's jaw tightened. "He's trying to buy my own people." "Gets worse." I dug into his finances. "He's been meeting with the Morettis multiple times over the past month." The Morettis were Matteo's biggest rivals, a family operation out of Providence that had been trying to muscle into Boston territory for years. If Antonio was working with them, "He's setting up an ambush," I said, the pieces clicking together. "The shipment was never real. He's trying to lure you to the port so the Morettis can take you out and take over my territory in the chaos that follows." Matteo's voice had gone cold and flat. "Alessandro, gather everyone. We're having a meeting." What followed was a masterclass in strategic violence. Matteo didn't rush into anything, didn't let anger drive his decisions. Instead, he spent 3 days gathering intelligence, confirming every detail of Antonio's betrayal, building an ironclad case. "I need you to do something for me," he told me on the 3rd day. "Something dangerous." "What?" "I need you to meet with Antonio. Tell him you're unhappy working for me, that you want out of our arrangement. See if he tries to recruit you." My stomach clenched. "You want me to go undercover?" "I want to know exactly what he's planning. And I think he'll tell you if he believes you're vulnerable and looking for a way out." Matteo's expression was serious. "But I won't order you to do this. It's your choice. You can say no." I thought about the basement, about my father selling me to Viktor, about the way Matteo had given me a choice when he could have just taken what he wanted. "I'll do it." "You're certain?" "No, but I'll do it anyway." He briefed me for hours, going over every possible scenario, every question Antonio might ask, every danger I might face. Alessandro fitted me with a wire so small I couldn't even feel it, and a panic button disguised as a bracelet charm. "Anything goes wrong, you trigger that button, and I'll be there in 90 seconds, Matteo said, checking the equipment one final time. "Anything at all." "I know. Sophia." He caught my hand. "You don't have to prove anything to me. You don't have to do this to earn your place here. I'm not doing it for you." I squeezed his fingers. "I'm doing it because Antonio needs to be stopped before someone gets killed. Including you." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe, or understanding. "Be careful. Always." The meeting with Antonio was at a coffee shop in the North End, public and seemingly safe. He arrived 10 minutes late, making me wait, establishing dominance through small power plays. "Sophia. What a pleasant surprise." He sat across from me, ordering an espresso with the casual arrogance of someone who owned the place. "What can I do for you?" "I need out." I let my voice shake slightly, playing the role of desperate woman. "Out of my arrangement with Matteo. Out of this whole world." "Why come to me?" "Because you have connections. Resources. And because I think you're planning something that might give me leverage to negotiate my release." His eyes sharpened with interest. "What makes you think I'm planning anything?" "I'm a psychologist. I read people. I know you're working with the Morettis. I know the shipment is a setup." I leaned forward. "And I know Matteo suspects something but doesn't have proof. Yet. And you're willing to help me in exchange for what?" "Safe passage out of Boston. Money. A new identity if necessary." I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. I didn't sign up for this. I was desperate when I agreed to work for Matteo, but I can't do 2 years in his world. I can't see the things he does and pretend I'm okay with it. Antonio studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. "You're smarter than you look. I have a psychology degree from BU. I'm a lot of things, but stupid isn't one of them. Here's what I can offer you." He leaned back, confident now. "You tell me Matteo's security protocols, where he'll be and when for the shipment. And in exchange, I'll give you $200,000 and a recommendation to the Moretti family. They could use someone with your skills. And Matteo? Matteo won't be a problem anymore." He said it casually, like discussing the weather. "Accidents happen in this business, especially to people who get too comfortable with their power." There it was. Confirmation of assassination plans, recorded on the wire I was wearing. I need guarantees, I said, playing my part. I need to know I'll actually be protected. You have my word. Your word isn't worth much if you're planning to betray someone you shook hands with 2 months ago. That made him laugh. Fair point. How about this? You give me the information, I'll give you half the money up front. Once Matteo's handled, you get the rest and your new identity. Deal. I pretended to consider it. Let the silence stretch. Let him think I was actually weighing the decision. Then, deal. We shook hands. He gave me a burner phone to contact him with the details. And I walked out of that coffee shop with everything Matteo needed to destroy him. You did well. Matteo's voice was quiet as he listened to the recording for the 3rd time. We were back in his office, Alessandro present, the evidence of Antonio's betrayal undeniable. What happens now? I asked. Now I handle it. He stood, his movements controlled but radiating tension. You stay here. You stay safe. And you let me do what needs to be done. Matteo, this is the part where you don't want to know the details. His eyes met mine, dark and serious. This is where you have to decide if you can live with what I'm about to do. I thought about Antonio's casual dismissal of murder. About the ambush that would have killed Matteo and probably Alessandro too. About the reality of this world I'd entered. Do what you need to do, I said quietly. But come back. That's all I ask. He crossed to me, cupped my face gently, and kissed my forehead. I'll come back. He left with Alessandro and 4 other men. I watched from the window as they drove away into the night, and I tried not to think about what handling it meant in Matteo's world. He returned 6 hours later, alone, his knuckles bruised but his suit still immaculate. He found me in the kitchen, where I'd been making coffee at 4 a.m. because sleep was impossible. It's done, was all he said. Antonio, on his way to Providence with a very clear message about what happens to people who betray me. He'll live, but he won't be working in Boston again. And the Morettas have been reminded that my territory is not up for negotiation. He poured himself coffee with steady hands. There won't be any more problems from that direction. I should have been horrified. Should have been calculating how quickly I could run. Instead, I felt relief. You kept your word. You came back. I told you I would. He set down his coffee and pulled me into his arms. Thank you for what you did today, for trusting me enough to do it. I didn't do it because I trust you. I wrapped my arms around his waist, holding on tight. I did it because I care about you. There's a difference. He went very still. Sophia. I know it's stupid and dangerous and completely insane. I know the power dynamics are wrong and the timing is terrible and we barely know each other. I pulled back to look at him. But I care about you anyway. So if you're going to reject this, reject me. Just do it quickly, so I can start pretending I didn't say anything. Instead of answering with words, he kissed me. Deep and desperate and honest, his hands tangling in my hair, his body pressing me back against the counter. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. I care about you too, he murmured. More than is wise. More than is safe. So what do we do about it? We're careful. We're honest. And we see where this goes. He kissed me again, softer this time. But Sophia, this world I live in, the things I do, they don't go away just because we have feelings for each other. If anything, it makes things more dangerous. For both of us. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what it means to be with someone like me? I thought about my father's basement. About Victor's flat eyes. About the way Matteo had appeared like some avenging angel and given me a choice when everyone else had treated me like property. I understand you're dangerous, I said slowly. I understand you hurt people and break laws and operate outside every conventional moral framework. But I also understand you have lines you won't cross, rules you follow. And I understand that for some reason I don't fully comprehend, you've decided I'm worth protecting, worth caring about, worth choosing. You are worth it. His hands framed my face. You're worth everything. Then stop trying to talk me out of this and take me upstairs. He did. The next year passed in a blur of work and growing intimacy. I learned the intricacies of Matteo's business. Not just the analysis work, but the relationships that held his empire together, the delicate balance of power that kept peace in the city. I sat in on meetings with city officials who looked the other way in exchange for campaign contributions. Negotiations with union bosses who ensured Matteo's construction projects went smoothly. Dinners with legitimate businessmen who benefited from his less-than-legal activities without asking too many questions. And slowly, I stopped seeing everything in black and white. Started understanding the shades of gray that define Matteo's world. He was a criminal, yes. But he was also the person who made sure Mrs. Chen's restaurant didn't get burned down by protection racketeers. Who paid for neighborhood kids to go to college. Who shut down a drug operation that was targeting middle schoolers, even though drugs meant profit. "You're changing," Julia said during one of our monthly coffee dates. She was my one friend from my old life, the only person who knew about my arrangement with Matteo. "You're different than you were a year ago." "How so?" "Harder. More cynical. But also more confident." She studied me over her cappuccino. "You've stopped apologizing for taking up space." She was right. Working for Matteo, being valued for my mind rather than just tolerated, had changed something fundamental in me. I'd stopped making myself small. Stopped apologizing for being smart or capable or ambitious. "Is that bad?" I asked. "No. It's just different." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I'm glad you're safe. Glad you found something that works, even if it's not conventional. But Sophia, be careful. Men like Matteo, they're magnetic until they're dangerous. Sometimes both at once. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're falling in love with a crime boss and pretending the consequences don't matter." "I'm not pretending anything." I pulled my hand back. "I know exactly what Matteo is. I just happen to think the world is more complicated than good people and bad people. That's what everyone says when they're justifying something they know is wrong." We finished our coffee in uncomfortable silence, and I wondered if she was right. If I'd crossed so many lines that I couldn't see them anymore. If caring about Matteo had blinded me to the reality of what he did. But then I went home, to the brownstone that had become home, to the man who kissed me like I was precious, to the work that made me feel valuable. And I couldn't regret my choices, even knowing what they cost. 18 months into our arrangement, my father showed up at the brownstone. Alessandro called up to the office, his voice tight. "Boss, Michael Russo is at the door. Says he needs to see his daughter." I looked at Matteo, who'd gone very still. "Your call," he said quietly. "I'll support whatever you decide." Part of me wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell Alessandro to send him away, to maintain the separation I'd built. But another part, the part that remembered loving my father before the gambling destroyed him, needed to see him. Needed to know if there was anything left of the man who'd raised me. Send him up. My father looked older than I remembered. Thinner, grayer, with the worn-down look of someone who'd been fighting a losing battle for too long. He stood in the doorway of Matteo's office, taking in the expensive furniture and the view of Beacon Hill, and his face crumpled. "Sophia. God. You look good. You look healthy. What do you want, Dad?" "I wanted to see you. To apologize." He took a tentative step forward. "What I did, trying to sell you to Viktor, I can't take it back. Can't make it right. But I'm sober now. 90 days. And I'm working the steps, and one of them is making amends." Amends. The word tasted bitter. "You were going to sell me into sexual slavery, and you think 90 days sober and an apology makes that okay?" "No. God, no. Nothing makes it okay." His voice broke. "I just needed you to know I'm sorry. That I hate myself for what I did. That I understand if you never want to see me again." Matteo had stayed silent throughout this exchange, but now he spoke. "Michael, you should know that Sophia has become invaluable to my organization. She's not here out of obligation anymore. She's here because she chooses to be." My father's eyes widened. "You're working for him?" "Willingly. Yes. But the debt, I thought after 2 years. The debt was paid the night Matteo kept me from Viktor." I stood, moving to stand beside Matteo. "I stayed because I wanted to. Because this work matters to me. Because he treats me like I'm valuable, not like I'm property." The implication was clear. Matteo had given me more respect in 18 months than my father had in 24 years. "I'm glad," my father said, and he sounded like he meant it. "I'm glad you found somewhere you feel safe. Somewhere you're valued. You deserve that, Sophia. You always did. Then why did you try to sell me?" "Because I'm an addict and a coward, and I put my own needs above yours." He wiped at his eyes. "But I'm trying to be better. I'm working, going to meetings, seeing a therapist. And maybe someday, if you can forgive me, we could try to rebuild something. Not what we had before, but something new." I looked at Matteo, who gave me the smallest nod. "Your choice. Always your choice." "I need time," I told my father. "I need to know you're serious about recovery, not just going through the motions." And I need you to understand that our relationship, if we have one, will be on my terms. Not yours. Of course. Whatever you need. He pulled out a card with his therapist's number. You can call her if you want. Verify I'm actually doing the work. And Sophia? Thank you for not slamming the door in my face. After he left, I sat heavily in Matteo's desk chair, emotionally exhausted. He came to stand behind me, his hands settling on my shoulders, kneading gently. You okay? He asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe he's changed. Part of me thinks I'm being naive. Maybe both can be true. His hands continued their gentle massage. People can change, Sophia. Not always, not easily, but they can. The question is whether you want to give him the chance. Do you think I should? I think you should do whatever helps you heal. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. But I also think you shouldn't rush it. Let him prove himself over time. Actions, not words. When did you get so wise? Around the time a smart, brave woman walked into my life and made me want to be better. He turned the chair, bringing us face to face. You've changed me, Sophia. Made me think about legacy and what kind of man I want to be. That's not nothing. What kind of man do you want to be? The kind who deserves you. He kissed me softly. The kind who uses power to protect, not destroy. The kind my mother would have been proud of. My chest tightened with emotion. Your mother would be proud of you. You saved me from the same fate she suffered. That matters. Maybe. He pulled me to my feet, into his arms. What matters more is that you're here. That you chose to stay. That despite everything. I love you. The words came out before I could stop them. I know it's complicated and messy and probably a terrible idea, but I love you anyway. He went very still. Then, say that again. I love you, Matteo Salvatore. Crime boss, protector, the most complicated man I've ever met. I love you. I love you too. His arms tightened around me. Have for months. Probably since that first night when you told me you'd do the undercover work even though you were terrified. That was 15 months ago. I know. He smiled against my hair. I'm patient when it matters. We stood there in his office, holding each other while the city hummed outside, and I realized my 2 years were almost up. In 6 months, I'd be free of obligation. Free to leave with money and protection and a clean slate. Free to choose whether to stay. When my time is up, I said quietly, I want to renegotiate our arrangement. Oh, I want to stay. But not as someone working off a debt. As your partner. You're equal. He pulled back to look at me. Sophia, you know that's impossible. My world. Your world needs someone who can see threats before they materialize. Who can read people and strategy and help you build something that lasts. I met his eyes steadily. And I need work that matters, where I'm valued for my mind. Where I can make a difference, even if that difference is keeping a crime boss alive and occasionally on the right side of his own moral code. You want to stay in organized crime. I want to stay with you. The crime part is just logistics. That made him laugh, a real, genuine laugh that I didn't hear often enough. Logistics. You're calling organized crime logistics. Well, it is. It's just business with more violence and fewer legal protections. I cupped his face. But here's what I know, you're building something here. An organization with rules, with ethics, with actual values. And I want to help you build it. Not because I'm obligated to, but because I believe in it. In you. You're insane, he murmured. Brilliant and brave and completely insane. So that's a yes? That's a let me think about it. He kissed me deeply. Because if you stay, if you choose this life willingly, there's no going back. You'll be in this world permanently. Known, marked, targeted. Everything that comes with being my partner. I understand the risks. Do you? Because our enemies will use you against me. They'll threaten you, hurt you if they can, try to leverage you for power. His expression had gone dark. I can protect you, but I can't make you invulnerable. And the thought of you being hurt because of me is the same as me worrying about you every time you leave this house. I pressed my fingers to his lips. We protect each other. That's how this works. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, 6 months. We have 6 months before your obligation ends. Let's use that time to make sure you're absolutely certain. Because if you stay, Sophia, I'm never letting you go. Promise? Promise. 6 months later, on the exact anniversary of the night Matteo had saved me from Viktor, we sat in his office reviewing contracts. It was ordinary, mundane, exactly the kind of work that had become our life together. So, Matteo said, setting down his pen, your obligation officially ends tonight. You're free to walk away. No strings, no consequences. And if I want to stay, then we draw up new contracts. You as my partner, my equal, my consultant. Salary commensurate with your value, which is considerable. Full profit sharing on all ventures. And he pulled out a small box from his desk drawer. This. He opened it to reveal a ring. Not an engagement ring. It was too severe for that, too practical. A band of white gold with a single small diamond, elegant and understated. It's a promise, he said. A promise that you're choosing this freely. That you're mine and I'm yours, and that whatever comes, we face it together. Not an engagement ring, I noted. Not yet. First you have to survive a year as my partner without running screaming. He smiled. Then we discuss marriage. Deal. I held out my hand, and he slipped the ring on my finger. Perfect fit, like everything else about us. Though for the record, I'm not running anywhere. Good. He pulled me into his lap. Because I have plans for you, Sophia Russo. Big plans. What kind of plans? The kind that involve expanding our legitimate businesses. Using your psychology degree to assess potential partners. Maybe eventually moving into consulting for other organizations who want to operate more ethically. His hand settled on my waist. You've made me want to be better. To build something that matters beyond just money and power. So I'm your conscience. You're my partner. There's a difference. We kissed as the sun set over Boston, turning the sky shades of pink and gold. And I thought about the basement 18 months ago, the terror and helplessness and absolute certainty that my life was over. Thought about the man who'd appeared like some dark angel and given me a choice when everyone else had treated me like property. Thought about the work I did now, complex and morally ambiguous but genuinely important. The way I'd grown from surviving to thriving. The way loving Matteo had taught me I could be both soft and strong, vulnerable and powerful. What are you thinking? Matteo asked, his voice rumbling against my ear. That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Even though where you're supposed to be is in the arms of a crime boss? Especially because of that. I turned to face him. You saved me, Matteo. Not just from Viktor, but from a life where I made myself small and powerless and afraid. You gave me space to become someone I'm actually proud of being. You saved yourself, Sophia. I just provided the opportunity. Then thank you for the opportunity. I kissed him softly. And for loving me despite how complicated everything is. Because of how complicated everything is, he corrected. You're the only person who sees my world clearly and chooses to stay anyway. That's not nothing. We sat together as night fell over the city. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to build something in spite of it. Or maybe because of it. Julia had been right, I'd changed. But not in the ways she feared. I hadn't become harder or more cynical or morally compromised. I'd become more fully myself. More honest about what I wanted and what I could live with. And what I wanted, what I could live with, was this. A complicated man with blood on his hands and honor in his heart. Work that mattered even though it existed in gray areas. A life built on choices I made freely rather than circumstances forced on me. My father called the next week. 8 months sober, steady work, genuine progress in therapy. We had coffee, neutral territory, public place, Julia as backup. You look happy, he said, studying me across the table. Different than before. Stronger. I am stronger. Because of him? Matteo? Because of me. Matteo just gave me space to figure that out. I wrapped my hands around my cup. I'm staying with him, Dad. Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Because what we have is real. Even though he's a criminal. Even though. I met his eyes. The world isn't as simple as good people and bad people. Matteo does terrible things sometimes, but he also protects people who have nowhere else to turn. He has rules, ethics, actual values. That's more than a lot of supposedly legitimate businessmen can say. My father was quiet for a moment. Then, your mother would have hated this. The life you're choosing. Maybe. Or maybe she would have understood that sometimes survival means making unconventional choices. I thought about the woman I barely remembered. Kind, artistic, always trying to see the best in people. She loved you despite your flaws, Dad. Maybe she would have understood me loving someone despite his. I hope so. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. I want you to be happy, Sophia. Even if that happiness looks different than I imagined. We weren't fixed. Probably never would be. But it was a start. A foundation we could maybe build on slowly, carefully, over time. 3 months later, Matteo took me to meet his adoptive family at their vineyard in Napa. His father, The man who'd raised him after his mother escaped trafficking was retired now, but still sharp-eyed and assessing. "So you're the woman who's reformed my son," he said over dinner, his Italian accent thick, but his English perfect. "Reformed is a strong word," I replied. "I'd say influenced towards slightly more ethical business practices." That made him laugh. "She's got spine, Matteo. I like her. She's got more than spine. She's got the mind of a strategist and the heart of a protector." Matteo's hand found mine under the table. "She's made me want to be the man you raised me to be." His father's eyes softened. "Your mother would have liked her too. Would have appreciated someone who sees the complexity in people rather than judging in absolutes." We spent the weekend at the vineyard, walking through rows of grapes, drinking wine on the terrace, talking about family and legacy and what it meant to build something that lasted. Matteo's father told stories about his mother, her strength, her resilience, the way she'd fought to make something beautiful out of trauma. "She never let what happened to her define her," his father said. "She used it to fuel her determination to protect others." That's where Matteo gets his rules about trafficking, his absolute line in the sand. I understood then, more fully than before, why Matteo had appeared in that basement. Why he'd paid $200,000 for a stranger. Why he'd given me choices when he could have simply taken what he wanted. He wasn't trying to save me. He was trying to save his mother, retroactively, through every woman he protected. "Thank you," I told him that night, as we lay in bed in the guest house overlooking the vineyard. "For telling me about her. For letting me understand where you come from. Thank you for staying." His arms tightened around me. "For choosing this life, even though it's complicated and dangerous and morally ambiguous. It's my life. I get to choose what I can live with. And you can live with me? I can live with you. I can thrive with you." I propped myself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "Ask me." "Ask you what?" "You know what?" He smiled, that rare, genuine expression that still made my heart skip. "Marry me, Sophia. Build this empire with me. Be my partner in everything." "Yes." Just like that. No deliberation. I've been deliberating for 2 years. I kissed him. The answer was always going to be yes. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the vineyard, surrounded by the family Matteo had built. Not just blood relations, but the people who'd chosen to follow him, to work for him, to believe in his vision of what organized crime could be. Alessandro stood as best man, his granite face actually smiling. Julia was my maid of honor, despite her reservations, because she understood that sometimes love meant supporting choices you didn't fully agree with. My father came too, 1 year sober, slowly rebuilding his life. We weren't close, might never be close, but we were trying. That was enough. And as Matteo slipped a ring on my finger, this one clearly an engagement ring, elegant and perfect, I thought about the basement 2 years ago. The terror and helplessness and absolute certainty that my life was over. I'd been right, in a way. That life was over. But this life, this complicated, morally ambiguous, absolutely perfect life, was just beginning. "I love you," Matteo murmured as we kissed to seal our marriage. "I love you too," I replied. "My dangerous, honorable, impossible man." "Your husband," he corrected. "My husband," I agreed. "For better or worse." "It'll probably be worse sometimes," he warned. "I know." I smiled against his lips. "I'm counting on it." We danced as the sun set over the vineyard, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness and built something luminous anyway. Not perfect, not simple, but real and chosen and entirely ours. And that was worth more than any conventional happy ending could ever be. Thank you so much for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel for more heartfelt and emotional stories like this one. Don't forget to like this video and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Your support truly means the world and helps me create even more amazing content for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. See you in the next video.